Water puts out fire. That is rule number one of the universe, right? Well, imagine throwing a bucket of water onto a burning ship, and instead of going out, the fire literally explodes, turning the ocean itself into a boiling pool of liquid hell. Welcome to the 7th century, the Dark Ages. While most of Europe was fighting in the mud with rusty swords and wooden shields, the Byzantine Empire, the surviving half of the Roman Empire, was out here casually inventing a flamethrower. They called it sea fire or Roman fire. Today we know it as the legendary Greek fire. It was a weapon so advanced, so utterly terrifying, that it single-handedly saved the empire from total annihilation. Not once, but twice. It terrified the enemies of Constantinople for over 500 years. Even when enemies managed to capture a ship armed with Greek fire, they couldn't use it. It was the most closely guarded state secret in human history. And the craziest part? The formula was kept so secret that when the empire finally fell, the recipe was lost forever. Let's unlock the mystery. The year is 674 AD. The world is changing rapidly, and the Byzantine Empire is shrinking. The mighty Umayyad Caliphate, an unstoppable superpower of the time, sets its sights on the ultimate prize, Constantinople. They launch a massive, seemingly infinite armada. Hundreds of wooden warships darken the horizon. Inside the city walls, Emperor Constantine IV is doing the math, and the math looks terrible. The Byzantines quickly raise a massive iron chain across the Golden Horn, locking their harbor. But the enemy fleet just anchors outside, establishing a brutal naval blockade. They are here to stay. Their plan isn't to smash the walls. Their plan is to starve the city into submission. The siege drags on. 674 passes, then 675, then 676. Every spring, the enemy ships attack. Every winter, they retreat to a nearby island to rest and resupply. Hope is fading fast. The greatest city in Christendom is on the brink of total collapse. But history pivots on the strangest things. Enter Kallinikos of Heliopolis, a Syrian refugee fleeing the invasion. He isn't a general, and he isn't a warrior. He is an architect, a chemist, a mad scientist of the ancient world. Kallinikos arrives at the imperial court holding a single piece of parchment. It contains a terrifying recipe. The emperor, having absolutely nothing left to lose, gives Kallinikos unlimited resources. Deep in the secret imperial workshops, the Byzantines begin brewing a concoction so volatile it will change naval warfare forever. So, what exactly was in this devil's cocktail? Historians have debated it for centuries. Was it liquid petroleum, quicklime, sulfur, pine resin? We might never know the exact ratios, but Kallinikos created a sticky, highly flammable goo that ignited on contact with water and clung to anything it touched. Flesh, wood, metal. Nothing was safe. But having a deadly liquid is only half the battle. How do you deliver it without burning your own ship to ash? You can't just throw it in buckets. The Byzantines needed a specialized delivery system. They combined the chemical genius of Kallinikos with advanced Roman engineering. Enter the siphon, an ancient, terrifyingly complex pressure pump. Below deck, soldiers would heat the liquid in a massive bronze cauldron. Then, using a hand-operated force pump, they would build up extreme air pressure. This was incredibly dangerous. One wrong move, and the pressure cooker turns your own ship into a flying splinter bomb. But if done right, the highly pressurized liquid was forced up a brass tube and out through a nozzle, usually shaped like a terrifying bronze lion's head at the front of the ship. At the mouth of the lion, a small flame was kept burning. When the valve opened, the liquid shot through the flame, creating a continuous roaring stream of liquid fire. The Umayyad fleet, expecting the usual volleys of arrows and stones, sailed confidently toward the Byzantine ships. But they were not met with arrows. Instead, A roaring stream of liquid fire erupted from the bronze lion heads. The sticky, burning goo splattered violently across the wooden hulls and sails of the massive enemy armada. In absolute panic, the terrified soldiers did what anyone on fire would naturally do. They jumped into the ocean. But Greek fire defied the laws of nature. It continued to burn intensely right on the surface of the water. The Golden Horn Harbor transformed from a battlefield into a terrifying, inescapable sea of swirling red and gold flames. Thick, toxic black smoke blocked out the sun, while the screams of the defeated echoed off the massive city walls. Even desperately throwing sand or vinegar on the flames, the traditional methods for fighting chemical fires, barely slowed the destruction. The mighty enemy fleet, previously thought to be completely invincible, was utterly decimated in a matter of minutes. Dozens of majestic warships burned down to the waterline and sank into the deep, taking thousands of men with them. From the safety of the battlements, Emperor Constantine and his soldiers watched the annihilation in stunned, victorious silence. The few surviving enemy ships desperately turned around, their crews rowing away in absolute, unadulterated horror. For 5 long years, they had relentlessly tried to starve and break the city, but the fire broke them instead. The Umayyad Caliphate was eventually forced to sign a humiliating peace treaty and pay a heavy tribute to Constantinople. The city was safe for now. But the terrifying legend of Kallinikos' invention had only just begun to spread. But the Umayyad Caliphate wasn't going to give up that easily. In 717 AD, nearly 40 years later, they returned for round 2. And this time, they brought an apocalypse. 120,000 men and a terrifying armada of over 2,500 ships. Led by the brilliant General Maslama, the Arabs had learned their lesson. They anchored far away, out of the flamethrowers' reach. But Emperor Leo III, the new Byzantine ruler, had a trick up his sleeve. He didn't wait for them to attack. Under the cover of darkness, he sent fire ships straight into their anchored fleet. These were small, unmanned boats packed with Greek fire, steered silently toward the sleeping enemy. The ocean lit up in the middle of the night. Greek fire rained down, creating a blazing inferno that destroyed hundreds of ships before they could even pull their anchors. Furious but determined, the surviving invaders decided to wait it out on land. They set up camp and blockaded the city. But nature had other plans. The winter of 717 was one of the cruelest in recorded history. For 100 agonizing days, snow covered the ground. The besiegers began to starve, freezing to death in their own camps. By the time spring arrived, a Bulgarian army, allied with the Byzantines, ambushed the weakened, frost-bitten survivors. Out of 2,500 ships, only a tiny handful managed to limp back home. The second great siege was completely shattered. Greek fire had saved Western civilization once again. The empire was secure. But what exactly happened to this miraculous weapon? Why don't we have it today? It's a miracle the recipe survived the first siege. But keeping a military secret for 5 centuries? That's almost impossible. Empires have spies. People talk. Recipes get stolen. So how did the Byzantines hide the ultimate weapon for so long? The answer is a security tactic modern intelligence agencies call compartmentalization. The emperor decreed that absolutely no single person would ever know the entire process of making Greek fire. One group of workers in a highly guarded facility only collected the raw materials. They didn't know what they were for. Another secret workshop deep underground only boiled the chemicals. They had no idea how the delivery pumps worked. A completely different guild of bronzesmiths built the siphons and the lion heads. And the sailors who operated the weapon on the ships? They only knew how to turn the valves and aim. The entire system was a giant puzzle, and only the emperor and a few elite scientists held all the pieces. Enemy spies tried everything. They sneaked into Constantinople, offering mountains of gold for the recipe. But even if a spy bribed a worker, They only got useless fragments. Knowing how to boil pine resin doesn't give you a flamethrower. What about capturing the weapon? Well, the Bulgarians and the Arabs actually managed to capture Byzantine fire ships a few times. But capturing a machine and knowing how to safely pressurize volatile chemicals are two very different things. Without the exact instruction manual, enemies who tried to use the captured siphons usually just ended up blowing themselves up. The secret was locked away in a web of paranoia so tight, it became a myth even to the Byzantine citizens themselves. So, what happened to it? By the 13th century, Greek fire simply vanished from historical records. Some historians believe the empire lost access to specific oil wells around the Black Sea. Others think the compartmentalization worked a little too well. When a few key engineers died, the knowledge died with them. For centuries, modern chemists have tried to reverse engineer the exact recipe. First off, we know it wasn't gunpowder. Gunpowder came from China much later and explodes instantly. The base was almost certainly naphtha, a highly flammable crude liquid petroleum. To make it ignite upon touching water, they likely added quicklime, a chemical that reacts violently with moisture. And to make it thick, sticky, and impossible to wash off, pine resin was mixed into the brew. But knowing the ingredients isn't enough. It's like having a cake recipe with no measurements and no baking temperature. Modern recreations can easily make fire burn on water. That's simple chemistry. But they can't match the sheer pressurized, roaring, explosive force described by ancient witnesses. The real secret wasn't just the chemistry. It was the Byzantine siphon, a highly specific, lost mechanical engineering technique. Our modern scientists, with all their advanced technology, are still scratching their heads. It remains one of the very few ancient technologies that our modern world still cannot perfectly replicate. It is a ghost weapon, a phantom fire from a fallen empire. But let's look at the bigger picture. Why does this lost recipe matter today? Because Greek fire didn't just save a city, it saved an entire continent. In the 7th and 8th centuries, Western Europe was weak, fractured, and fighting in the mud. If Constantinople had fallen during those early sieges, there would have been nothing to stop the Umayyad Caliphate from sweeping across Europe. The history of the world would have been completely rewritten. By holding the line, the Byzantine Empire acted as a giant, fire-breathing shield. They bought Western Europe over 700 years of precious time. Time to recover from the Dark Ages. Time to rebuild. Time to eventually spark the Renaissance. Greek fire is the ultimate symbol of Byzantine ingenuity. In an age of darkness, they engineered a literal flash of brilliance. A weapon born from desperation, perfected by science, and protected by absolute paranoia. It may be lost to history, but its impact built the world we live in today. Thank you for watching Byzantium Unlocked. If you enjoyed diving into the lost secrets of the Roman Empire, hit that like button and subscribe. Until next time, keep history alive.